If you're scrolling internet today, YouTube, Facebook, and you're wondering what on earth are you watching, this is the ongoing series that Bach Collegium San Diego is doing. We're featuring BCSD musicians, friends, and family week to week on Wednesdays, and now we've moved to the 2 o'clock hour to accommodate some other activities in the afternoon. My name is Ruben Valenzuela, and I'm the artistic director of Bach Collegium San Diego. And today, I personally am incredibly excited to welcome today's guest, which is MAURY Baker. MAURY Baker has been playing with Bach Collegium San Diego from the very, very beginning. In fact, and we'll get to this in due time. We actually met a few years before that on some one-off concerts that I was doing back in around 2001, 2002. And I'll let MAURY speak about that. But MAURY, welcome today to the interview room, as it were. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be here, man. I'm really, really thrilled about this. And it was unexpected, and I'm just so happy to be doing it.
Fantastic. Yeah. As I mentioned to you just recently, you're going to break the internet today, I hope, because we're giving the people what they want. They wanted to hear from MAURY Baker. And the other thing, too, is, gosh, one of the interesting things that you bring to the table is that you have such an incredible, rich musical past. And we're going to kind of take you through that in just a minute. You know, we met in the early 2000s, but I think at one of those initial meetings, you told me all these wonderful stories as to, you know, people you've played with, musical experiences you've had, where you've worked, who you've worked with. So let's start really quick here. Just, can you say something about how did you find the drums and percussion, and what led you to that?
Well, actually, I think my father is probably responsible for that. He was a writer. He's a Hollywood writer.
Oh, okay.
But he played drums and as a hobby. You know, I played in some bands and stuff, but it was a hobby. And one day I was I was at camp and I was swinging on a bar, and I fell down and I broke my left wrist really badly, every bone in it. So I was about 12. And so, you know, they put a cast on it and everything. And when the cast came off, he said, you know, I got this drum set down in the basement. Why don't you kind of fool around with it a little bit and just get exercise your wrist. And I did. And the next thing you know, I had a union card, you know, so. So that's how it really started. The drumming part of it started. Yeah. And so, and then after that, the very next thing I did with drumming was to play with the American Legion, in '74 in New York. So I did that, and you know, I marched around with a blue sparkle snare drum, and my hands were still working. Everything was working fine, and that's how it started, basically.
Yeah. So, and can you just tell us again, where exactly were you as a childhood? Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
New York City. New York City. Manhattan.
Okay. Yeah. And did you have, at that point, any, you know, by the time you had the blue sparkly drum and all that good stuff, did you have any drummers that you looked up to that you said, hey, that's a guy that I could really model myself after?
I did. After a little time went by and I was sort of playing more, you know, jazz kind of stuff. My biggest influence, aside from, one thing is I lived next door to Buddy Rich.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, not only Buddy Rich, but down the street was Greta Garbo.
Goodness.
So it was a pretty celebrity rich.
I would say bring your autograph book.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't get to talk to Buddy more than like maybe once or twice.
Okay.
And then, but my biggest influence, aside from the very early guys, was without a doubt Max Roach. My biggest influence, the most musical drummer I'd ever heard. You know, he played melodies, and he wasn't just about doing tricks with drums and sticks and stuff like that. He was just a very fine musician, you know, really terrific musician. And then after that, you know, Tony Williams and some of the more freer kind of players, you know, not locked into just, you know, playing all 4 beats and everything. So, and that happened. And then, you know, Art Blakey, of course.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
I was trying to lead you to the promised land. That's my man.
That role of his was enough to make me really want to learn rudiments very, very.
Right.
So that's basically the biggest influences. And of course, right now there's so many great players around, young guys that are just terrific. So that's essentially how the whole drum thing started.
Yeah. All right. So then take us to a little fast forward here. Take us to the 60s. Can you remember back to the 60s?
Remember them, yeah.
and take us to that point where a lot of our BCSD followers will not know this. If we know you well, we do know this. But you were at Woodstock and played with Janis Joplin. This is an incredible story to me because with the first time you mentioned it, it just kind of blew my face off. How did that connection happen? Where was the connection? How was the invitation to do that? And tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, essentially, it started with my band Ars Nova.
Okay.
So Ars Nova, we met at Manus, and we were all contemporaries there, and we had an idea. I had an idea too. Since we were all very much into Renaissance and Baroque music, especially Renaissance, we decided we wanted to put a group together, and the perfect name for that was Ars Nova. I mean, we sort of
perfect.
And there were 5 of us. 3 of us are still alive. 3 of them are gone now. And we did all kinds of we did the parts of the Machel Mass,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And stuff like that. So anyway, that was a big influence on us. And so Paul Rothschild, who was the producer of The Doors at the time, found us. I'm trying to remember how it happened, but he found us, and after that, I played the album, and then after that, the band finished the album, finished a small playing tour that we did, and then the very next thing was, since I was on that label at the time, Elektra Records.
Wow.
Since the band sort of stopped then at that point, internal stuff, and we changed hands a bit, he got me with Judy Collins. And so that's the Judy Collins thing happened. And once I played that gig, then things started to, take shape a little bit for me in that particular genre of the music biz. And then the next thing, after, we did this, I found out from John Cook, the late John Cook, who was her road manager and has written a book. He called me one day and said, they're looking for a drummer for Janis Joplin. Would you want to come down to the studios, CBS, and do the audition? So, I was living in Laurel Canyon at the time, and that was a very popular, avenue for a lot of these artists and stuff. So anyway, I came down and I did this audition, and they didn't have any charts or anything like that, but there was a 3-piece horn section and a 4-piece rhythm section. And I did the audition and played, and I've got pretty good ears, so I just sort of winged my way through it. It was pretty standard kind of R&B kind of stuff. And then she wasn't even there for that audition, by the way.
Okay.
So then the next time we met, we played, and I met her at the recording session that we did for I Got Them Old Cosmic Blues Again, Mama.
Okay.
And at that point, I heard her, and there we are meeting, and I'm playing the session with her. So essentially, it was being a session musician. But then he said, "Of course, you're going to go on the road. Can you go on the road?" I said, "Sure, of course,
Of course you do."
Yeah, right. Of course. We did the album, and everything worked out fine. And then she came to pick. This is funny though, because my girlfriend at the time had a little girl band. Not a little girl band. A female band, okay, and it was a rock band, and I was sort of tutoring them a little bit and sort of producing them a little bit. And so I had finished the album, and we were in Laurel Canyon, and then we're rehearsing with this band, and they're doing "Piece of My Heart." Okay, so they're a Janis tune, and they stop for a second, and they hear a door knock at the door. So the knock at the door, we open the door, and there's Janis standing in front of her. Oh
my gosh! Yeah. And
my girlfriend turned white. It was like, oh my God. And Janis looked at her and said, hey, maybe I should take you on the road, you guys. I'm here to pick up your old man and drive up to San Francisco for the rehearsals to go on the road.
Right.
And her little famous Porsche with all of the painting all over the Porsche. You know, so did you ever drive one of these? And I said, no. And she threw me the keys, and off we went. You know,
wow.
It went all the way up to San Francisco in this car. And that's how that happened, basically.
All right. And how did you get to the? So it's now you're on tour, you're on the road, and Woodstock happens. Did you know at that particular moment the magnitude of what that event would become? How iconic it is in terms of that era?
Not a clue. None of us. She came to us rehearsal.
Yeah.
And said, you know, we're going to do this concert in Woodstock, New York. I said, really? Yeah. Yeah. Be pretty big, but we don't know. There's, you know, they didn't expect obviously 400,000 people. So we started rehearsing, and the next thing you know, we're flying in over the grounds, and we're in this Sikorsky helicopter. Okay, and she looks down. She's standing with me next to the window, and she says, "I can't relate to this. Oh my God, look at this! I can't relate." And I said, you know, that's not going to affect you. You know, by the time you get on stage, you're just going to be your old Janis self. And she said, yeah, I don't know. Look at this thing, you know. And it was, and you know, before you knew it, there we were. We went on very late, by the way. We went on wee morning hours of Saturday. So we got up there, and it was a long set, and you know, she liked to drink. And so, you know, she was very self-critical of herself, you know, very, very self-critical. And so we did the performance, and she, you know, it was just, we were all amazed, but we never, I don't think any of us really thought that it would become, you know, a seminal event.
Yeah. We just, do you remember who played either before you or after you guys on that set? I'm not sure. I can't remember now. I think it might have been Sly and the Family Stone. I don't know. Oh my God.
Wow. Because I was backstage, right behind the stage where they were playing, right behind their riser, and Janis and I and Grace Slick were sort of just boogalooing and dancing around.
Yeah.
But I think that they were before us. I could be wrong though. Somebody will probably correct me. That was, you know, history.
Yeah. Did you run into Hendrix? Did you see him?
No, but I have a story about Hendrix.
Bring it on.
I was living in Hollywood, and there was a place called The Experience on, I think it was near Sierra Bonita and Sunset Boulevard. And I happened to be doing a gig with Zoot Money. Zoot Money was the organ player, keyboard player for Eric Burdon and the Animals.
Okay.
That was pretty well-known group. And I'm trying to remember how I got that gig, but a good friend of mine, Lee Underwood, who's a great guitarist who played with me with Tim Buckley for a long time, and was Tim's guitarist for many, many years, was in the band too. And so anyway, we played The Experience. We played a concert. And we were there for 2 nights. And the first night, in walks Jimi Hendrix. And he knew Zoot from England, of course. And so he goes up to Zoot and he says, you know, hey, Zoot, how you doing? He says, I haven't seen you in years. And Zoot's like, oh, Jimmy, how you doing? I said, would you bring your just guitar? You know, would you like And no, I didn't bring my, he was playing a gig there. He was going to be playing at the Whiskey, I think. So anyway, he brought his guitar the next night and sat in and went up, got on stage with us and played some kind of a funk tune because he was playing opposite Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So he was in that mode. So, you know, we played about 2 or 3 tunes, you know, and he packed his guitar up and we stopped the set, and, you know, I thanked him and it was very nice and very humble. And that's how I met Jimi Hendrix. So,
wow. So we maybe got a little bit ahead of ourselves, but the your time at Manus did it preceded Woodstock time, or was it after?
Way before Woodstock. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was the early 60s.
Okay. So when you were at Manus, was there a particular, like, what did you specialize in? Like,
well, I was there for was percussion, you know.
Percussion. Okay.
I was doing things other than there, man. I was studying composition with Charlotte Hope, and she was teaching me species counterpoint, you know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
So I knew where my fifths were, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Watch out for those hidden fifths, for sure. Along the way, well, before we leave Janis Joplin here, the picture that you see there, where is that taken? What was that event? What was that?
You know, I think that might. I don't think it was Woodstock. I'm looking at her outfit because sometimes I can identify which concert it is by what outfit. Maybe. You know?
Yeah.
But because we did a lot of outdoor concerts, we did the Louisiana Pop Festival, and we, you know, New Jersey Pop Festival, and we were in Texas doing pop festivals all over the South, you know. So
right.
She was from Port Arthur, Texas, so you know. Okay.
Do you remember the last time you saw her?
The last concert we did was at Madison Square Garden, opposite.
Oh wow.
Joe Cocker, I think, was on that bill, and let's see. Then we did one in Boston with Johnny Winter. I got to play with Johnny Winter on stage.
My gosh, I'm learning all kinds of interesting things about you that I did not know. This is great.
Well, you know, I'm trying to remember all of it, but I did put a few notes down here, you know, for stuff. But the last one was the Madison Square Garden. That was in December of '69. So
'69. Yeah. Okay.
Then she took a break. She went to South America and then came back and formed another band. So
yeah. So fast forward to, well, not quite the present time, but at some point, how did you come across this whole idea of period instruments playing Baroque timpani, and what was the original recording that sort of said, hey, this is something I need to look into? What's this all about?
Well, actually, oddly enough, the whole early music thing in general, I mean, at least 300 or 100 years of it or so, started while I was in high school, because my music teacher at the time, Donald Rock, was a specialist in a lot of you know, a cappella choral music. You know, like my sister Nicole Baker, who's got you know, Essence. And
Nicole. By the way, Nicole is watching right now. So
I hope she is. Hi, sweetie. How you doing? So you know, basically. He took me one night. He lived around the corner from this high school, and this was a seminal moment. This was a major moment for me. This was like the epiphany of all time for me, essentially. He said, "Come over to the school. I'm going to take you into the music room, and we're going to listen to something." And he took me into his office, and he put on these speakers, and he put on the Mozart Requiem.
Yeah,
and that did it for me. I listened to the whole thing through, and when I left that office, I was just I was trying to figure, how am I going on the world? Am I going to just, I mean, the whole early music thing started for me at that point.
I see.
But it got even earlier than that. I was really into major, you know, Renaissance, late Renaissance, early Baroque music. And the Mannerists were the major thing for me. You know, they really were. Isoldo and all those guys, and you know, I put up a lot of these things on Facebook now.
Oh, I know. There's one particular recording that you post every so often.
Well,
I'm much better. So going back to early music, around that time, I presume you were buying recordings, and are there some specific conductor recordings ensembles that you were going to, like as your source?
David Monroe.
David Monroe. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, he could have used a penny whistle, and I would have been listening.
Yeah. And he may have used a penny whistle.
Yes, exactly.
In those recordings. Yeah. David Monroe is such a seminal figure in the early music movement.
Yeah.
That, you know, a lot of the names that you associate today, these big names, kind of trace back to, you know, Christopher Hogwood, which we'll get to in just a minute, David Monroe, and that.
Noah Greenberg is another one. Noah Greenberg.
And
yeah. The most dynamic person I had ever seen stand up in front of musicians or singers. I mean, he was so dynamic.
Okay.
The most ebullient, until I ran into you. I mean, you look like you're just in heaven.
It's coffee. It's coffee that does it. Yeah.
And that's inspiring when you see that. So anyway, that was a major influence on me and turning me on to Renaissance music and so forth. And then, of course, at school was also Carl Bamberger. And Carl Bamberger, there was a cellist that used to do impressions of Carl Bamberger because Carl would wear a cardigan and that had buttons. And we all knew where the downbeat was because it would happen at the first button on the way down from the downbeat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so, sure. And one day he showed up without the cardigan, and none of us knew where the downbeat was.
Right. So let's get to your. You've told this story to me many times, but you know, you need to say it. You need to tell it here again, and that's your experience with Christopher Hogwood. Christopher Hogwood is. For me, it was perhaps like David Monroe was to you, you know, in some way. In fact, the first recording of Messiah that stopped me dead in my tracks was somewhat by mistake getting my hands on that recording he did of Messiah with Emma Kirkby and company, and I had never heard that piece done that way. And Christopher Hogwood. At that point, I started buying all these Christopher. I mean, they were recording everything at that point, everything. But tell us your story about Christopher Hogwood when you interacted with him.
Well, okay, we were doing Gluck's Orfeo, which actually I believe, if I'm not mistaken, preceded Monteverdi's. And and it was a very kind of a avant-garde kind of, well, maybe not avant-garde, but it was an edgy production of it, okay? And there was some very fun, I mean, this is a long time ago now, so 20 some odd years ago. And they were doing the storm scene, and there was this big storm thing. And of course I had my little Baroque timpani. And so I took my lower drum and first of all, I'd play a roll, and then he'd stop and he'd look up and he'd say, "No more." He says, "That sounds like a roll on a timpani." Of course it is, and he says, "No, it needs thunder." You know, it's okay, all right. So then I lowered the drum and to make a sort of a floppy kind of, but non-definite pitch, and just make it kind of like.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I had my little mallets, and I played that, and then of course he stopped it again, and he said, "No. It's just now I'm hearing the sticks, and then it's okay. So do you have any bigger sticks and bigger mallets?" I said, "Okay, well, I didn't." So I had to drive 60 miles from County up to the Pro Drum Shop in Hollywood and buy $50 mallets that were the size of my head.
Yeah.
And drive back 60 miles. And then the next day at rehearsal, he said, he says, "Well, that's a bit better." He says, "But, I think the drum isn't big enough. So we need to do something else." So what they did was they got me a 36-inch bass drum, Grand Casa, put it on a spindle, and I took my $50 mallets and played, tuned it down, and he looked up and he just went, "Oh, lovely, perfect," and we got through the thing. That's my story with, and he sent me a letter that he signed Sempre Chris.
Oh my gosh.
Thank me.
That is a treasure. That is a treasure. You have it back in the wall. That's a treasure. That's a treasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my story.
Also, you mentioned in your credits when I asked you about conductors that you work with Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
And Robert Shaw, in the choral world is like this, another seminal figure on the choral scene. So tell us about that experience, because that's another unique.
Well, the only thing with that I can tell you is that a way of conducting that he has, or at rehearsals.
Yeah.
Most conductors, will tell, if you're stopping and something is not right, you're going to say what the correct thing is. You're going to say, well, this is what I'm here. This is what I need you to do because we need to do this because of this, and it's setting up this and so forth. He didn't seem to do that from my recollection. He would just do the thing, and if he didn't like it, let's do it again. Well, okay. Is there something we should look for?
Yeah.
No, just use your sticks. Okay, let's do it again. Whatever. And we would do like 3 or 4 days until they finally liked it, and no one knew why he liked it. I mean,
Right.
So that's basically so. It was a wonderful experience playing for him. I mean, it's brilliant.
Right. Right. And then you also spent some time working with Harmonia Mundi, the big label. Of course, I mean, you can explain this, but Harmonia Mundi is specifically a classical music label, is it?
Oh, well, it's been now incorporated into another major group, not so much the group or whatever it is. I'm not sure, but it's part of a larger conglomerate.
Larger, yeah. But I would guess that working for Harmonia Mundi and some of my favorite recordings of all time are under that label. You came across amazing recordings.
Yeah, I had a collection of incredible Renaissance early music collection. I had William Christie. I had.
I think Herbeck recorded exclusively.
I keep talking about Ad Dominum cum tribulare, the hostile.
That's it.
They did the best version of that I've ever heard in my life. I've heard many versions. So I used to, but that was quite an experience because I was their first employee. They were both French, and they came over here and did their thing here, So, and so I collected an immense array of early music from them, mostly early music,
Yeah. Do you still have do you maintain your collection? Like you still have is that what I see behind you, or CDs?
Oh, no, those are books. I have some, but basically I after the CDs really kind of, and the LPs and stuff went away, I sold them and I got rid of them because I'm trying to keep up with the times, and you can get almost all of these things really now on YouTube and stuff like that. Sometimes you can hear them,
Yeah, that's the thing about recordings. I was telling somebody recently because I moved recently, and I was my CDs are stored currently not in my home proper, right. And I was thinking, my gosh, I probably spent thousands and thousands purchasing these CDs. For me, it meant going down to Sunset and Amoeba Music and Tower Records back in some decades now ago, but now it's just like I wonder if those are even something that I want to keep around. Everything, of course, is on different platforms, streaming platforms now. Who knows? But I love the booklets. I mean, I even love the booklets of the old LPs. Some of these wonderful, especially the archive LPs have these beautiful booklets that you would open up. I mean, sometimes the recording was pure trash, but the booklet was absolutely great. So, but anyway. So that must have been a great experience working with Harmonia Mundi around that time. Yeah,
they were great people.
Yeah.
So
so let's fast forward to this is my recollection of meeting you, and maybe this is just how I have it in my brain, and you can correct me. So I think it was around 2001. I was in San Diego already at the time, and I was. I think I organized a performance of the Handel coronation anthems.
That's right.
And so we were doing naturally Zadok the Priest and The King Shall Rejoice. I think those two jump out at me at this point. Maybe those are the only two we did. But I called Greg Maldonado to see if he could help me put together an ensemble. Right. And so he did, and then I think we had one rehearsal, a quick rehearsal, like hours before the actual concert, living dangerously kind of thing. And then you showed up. Well, you were the first to show up. Naturally, you've got the cartage, and a van shows up. And then I was wandering around the parking lot, and you said, "Hey, hey man, my name's Maury, and I need some help. Where's the venue? And I need some help setting up and get some drums here." And that's my recollection of meeting you. And then that was around 2001, and here we are in 2020, and we've, just to be perfectly honest with you, everything that's ever required, timpani, drums, percussion of some sort, I think you've been there every time. Yeah. That you've been that person. So, Is that your recollection of meeting?
I believe that's the case. That was another major mark in my musical career, because then all of a sudden I'm embarking without knowing it, just like when you don't know these things until hindsight, and that started a huge, long, thing for me. I think one of the greatest highlights with Bach Collegium is two things.
Yeah.
The B minor Mass. Okay, the B minor Mass is one of the main moments for me, and the other one was, I guess, the Mozart Requiem.
Oh yeah, that Mozart Requiem, I remember being memorable, and it's something that we need to program again once we get back to actual, doing music the way we used to do it. Seems so long ago now, but yeah, there's actually a clip that you've posted and sometimes pops up in feeds. It's the Dies Irae in particular.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
It's pretty sizzling hot, I think. One of my MAURY highlights. There's definitely Mozart Requiem. There's obviously the Lully Te Deum that we played at the beginning of this interview. That was so much fun. Yeah. And then third is the Nelson Mass, the Haydn Nelson Mass.
Yeah.
That was pretty. That was the concert set we titled Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah,
and I named it that because of the Bach cantata that was first half of that program had some very direct references to wind and fire. It was a Pentecost cantata, naturally, and I thought, well, it was very naive of me. I was Earth, Wind, and Fire. It didn't in that moment occur to me. Well, I know of the group, but I didn't make a connection. And I remember somebody who was at the door that night. We were at Cardiff.
Yeah.
Somebody actually came to the concert and said, "I'm here for Earth, Wind, and Fire," and I'm kind of curious as to why Earth, Wind, and Fire is performing in a Greek Orthodox church. Number one. Number two, are there tickets left? And number three, are you sure I'm here to see Earth, Wind, and Fire? And I think they left. But they missed the great concert, because that was a fun concert. But you had a major part in that. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. And you know the story. I think I told you after we did the thing where I did the George of the Jungle thing. I did tell you that a couple came up to me as I was packing up afterwards, and there was an older couple, and she says to me, the wife says, she says, what was that? Did Lully write that? I said, no. And then the husband looked at her and says, "What's the matter with you? That's George of the Jungle." And I almost just fell over my drums. I said, oh my God.
And see, that's another, again, that's another reason why I absolutely love and adore working with you, because I mean, I can think of several people that I know that if I said to them on their respective instrument, "Hey, so I've got this really wacky idea. Like, can you ham this up a little bit?" And you were like, "Absolutely, man! George of the Jungle, bring it on! I think it'll be fun to kick off this amazing, Te Deum in this fashion and give everybody a chuckle."
Well, there's no way I would ever find a conductor that would even remotely suggest that. Can you imagine any of these other early music conductors say, "Well, why don't you just, wing it for a few moments here, but play the 8 bars or something, make sure it's 4 or 3, okay? Don't get into, 7 or 9 or anything like that."
Right. Well, I didn't ask you to drive 60 miles one way to get mallets. I asked you to play George of the Jungle, so it's a lot easier. Now, tell us about. I know you've got a number of projects going, and one of them. Can you tell us about the group you were describing to me a little earlier today?
Yeah. Well, my primary thing right now is a group that I called Baker's Brew, oddly enough, and it's a 4-piece group. I'm playing drums, and then there's a guitarist. Electric guitarist. There is a bassist that only plays upright, doesn't usually play electric at all. And then there's a guy that plays synthesizer and soprano sax. He's pretty kind of a leader of the band. And our music is completely improvised. It's we pick an idea. Somebody starts with an idea, and we develop it like a little composition. And we don't know where it's going, so we really can't duplicate it other than recording it, you know. So if we ever do 2 gigs in a row where the same person shows up and he says, "Hey, could you play this, you know, Meteorite tune?" I'm like, "No."
Right.
Why? Because it's a one-off. Everything was a one-off. So,
yes.
and it's kind of it's a mixture of kind of jazz, a bit, kind of straight ahead stuff, a little bit of funk and Latin-y kind of stuff, and electronics. So there's an electronic side to it. So it's a good candidate for either, well, mainly, you know, maybe universities and libraries.
Yeah. Now, there's a recording. You guys have done a recording, correct? Yeah. Where can people, if interested, where could they find that?
Well, they can go to Baker's Brew. They can go on Facebook. There's a page there, and all the links are there. So yeah, they could do that. Right. It's on YouTube as well. So, you know, just go to Baker's Brew more, you know. And it's available. We've got, you know, a few albums. We've got hours and hours of stuff on recording. So we're about to release some newer stuff that we've done in the last few months, obviously before, you know, this horrible thing. And so we're doing that. And then I have another idea that I mentioned to you, a thing called A Baker's Dozen. I guess I'm obsessed with it. Somebody take this away from me. And that's more of an early music thing where, and that's just in the basic concept idea still. It's not actualized in any way or manifested, but and that's all period instruments playing, you know, early dance music of the Renaissance and then some Baroque music, and then improvising on those melodies, because and then coming back and playing the melody again, you know, recapitulation, and that's for 13 players, you know, and includes sack butts and crumb horns and all of that kind of stuff. Wow. My Baroque timpani and, you know, that kind of thing. So that's it's still in the germinating stage at this point. Right?
Got it. So I asked viewers to throw some questions out for you, and so here's one for you, Maury. Okay. This is David Kurtenbach, our dear friend David. Is watching today, and he says, "What's your favorite genre to play, and B, to listen to? So what do you like to play, and what do you like to listen to, flat out?"
Oh my goodness, that's almost impossible since I'm got this crazy eclectic thing with music all the time. I say that I listen to a lot of Renaissance music, but I like playing straight ahead jazz and funk.
Okay. So I sort of you did name your favorite drummer, Max Roach. We established that, but is there like a jazz trio quartet that's your straight ahead go-to?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a group you may be familiar with, and they do Bach, and they do improvisations on Bach. There's a French group run by I think the pianist's name is Jacques Lussier.
Oh yes, I do.
And I like them quite a bit. They do you know, they do Bach, and they do, I guess, other than Bach too, but they do really nice. Do sort of what I'm getting at with this 13-piece group.
Got it.
But I love playing, you know, the timpani, especially with Bach-Collegium. So it's hard to pick you know, those are the 3 main pillars of my preferences and listening preferences, you know. Yeah.
Another dear friend, Marika, who, as you know, plays fairly regularly with BCSD, is asking, what type of synthesizer do you use in the group? Is there like a keyboard of some kind, or what do you guys?
Yeah, it's keyboard. I'm not sure what he's using now. He's got a few, but I'm not. Unfortunately, Marika, I can't remember what they are. But they're current. I mean, they're not old models of things. They're pretty, you know, recent, you know, models of keyboard.
Right. And here's a question from Judy Friedsam.
Yeah, my sister.
All right. She goes, please ask him when he will bring the pang to a party.
Oh God, yeah, of course. That's a standing thing with us. When I tell her I'm going to go do this or the luli, or she says, "Don't forget the pang." Thanks.
The pen. Yeah.
But she plays drums too, so
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
she plays too as well. So
I didn't realize that there was a sibling connection there, because I mean I see her name pop up on your feed and that sort of thing. So it's cool. And Nicole also says hello, by the way.
right.
And that was another thing, one of those small world moments when I don't remember where Nicole and I met originally, but we've circulated in Southern California for a while, and I think there was this one day, I think it was, you said, right? Do you know Nicole Baker? I'm like, well, yes, I do. And then that's I was like, oh my gosh, sister, like half sister. It's like that blew my mind, how all these webs of interconnected. So, but anyway, let's see if there's any other questions floating around here. We asked the pang one already, so that was quite good. What was that, Maury?
I was going to tell you about Zappa, unless you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bring it on.
I was touring with Tim Buckley. We did a kind of talk about avant-garde. We did an album called Star Sailor, and Star Sailor, which, by the way, included several musicians over time, but the main musician for Tim was Lee Underwood playing guitar. And Lee is also a very accomplished pianist too. He's got album out himself, and he's a great poet. Anyway, he was in the band, and he what was I going to say? The Zappa. We were doing a tour, and we were down south, and we were in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, South Carolina. And we were doing concert, and so Tim was on the bill because we were touring with Frank. Tim was touring with Frank because we were doing kind of crazy outside stuff, and so was Zappa, obviously. So, and Jim Gordon was the drummer at the time. Anyway, we finished our set, and Frank comes into the dressing room during the break and says, "Hey, Maury, you're going to have to play with me tonight." And I went, "Oh my goodness, this is the big one!"
Right.
I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he said, "Well, Jim Gordon and one of the trumpet players can't do the gig, and I won't go into the reason for it, but anyway, they couldn't do the gig at the very last minute, obviously. So I had to go out there and play. So and of course, Frank Zappa's charts are almost impossible. I mean, he's got some of them are a lot simpler than others, but still, it's all pretty difficult. Anyway, I got through some of it, and then toward the end of the set, he wanted to do an improv. So, okay, great. I don't have to read anything. I can just play. So he pretty much started the whole thing. He said, "Let's do it." And we asked the audience, "Is it okay if we improvise something?" And he says, "And if it's bad, if it's crappy, we'll just quit," and then that kind of thing. Being real, being Frank Zappa. And we just, we went into this thing, and I played some steel drums that Jim had there, and then I went and played his set, which was immense.
Right.
The only bad moment for me on that set was when I reached around to hit the last cymbal crash, the cymbal on his right just disintegrated off the stand.
Oh my gosh.
And I was mortified. And later on, when I saw Jim, I said I was just absolutely just contrite beyond belief. And he said, "Don't worry about it. It was cracked. I knew it was cracked. I knew I was going to hit it at one point. It was going to break."
Right.
And then we got through the set. And years later, I had sort of put it in the back of my mind. And a drummer friend of mine who handles the estate, the Zappa's estate, musical ownership, got a hold of me and said, "I'm going to send you an MP3 of you playing with Frank in South Carolina, 1971. So, oh my God, I'm afraid to hear it, and he sent me the thing, electronic file, and I heard it, and there it was, so I think I've put it up, but anyway, it was, and now it's a new release. They've released it's called Little Dots.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. It's on YouTube. So anyway, that's my Zappa story.
Zappa story. It's been. So I mentioned to you that I'm privy to comments that people are making, and one thing that I want to pass along to you is that it's been mentioned now several times that these stories are wonderful stories, rich stories that need to be, if you've not already written them down somewhere, and captured these, they need to be captured and put down somewhere for posterity. I don't know if that's something that you do already, but if not, I would highly recommend you do so.
Wow. You know, I've heard that before. Several very close people to me have suggested that. People that I love dearly, and they've done this, you know, they say you should write it down. And yeah, I could. The only thing is that I don't know if there's that much of them and how long they are each. You know, they're little snippets. They're little, almost haiku-like little things, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to, I mean, I have other things I want to do. I'm writing a string piece, and it's, you know, it's just toward the beginning of it. I've only got, you know, 50 bars to put together, but it's just like a string quartet, but not really a string quartet. It's a fugue, and it's 12 tone, and it's difficult, and it's taking me for, I'm trying to reach back into my species point thing, you know.
Yeah.
But, so I've got things I want to do. Writing, you know, if somebody could maybe take down, you know, because granted, I could do it. It's just that, and I really appreciate that sentiment. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. So that there isn't an enormous amount of pressure, maybe we make it a picture book, a big cardboard children's picture book with a little snippet paragraphs for each of the pictures.
Perfect. I went through the 60s. You know, it's just perfect.
There you go. Yeah, you know, there's the Janis Joplin page with a little fold out, you know, and there's the hamburger page and the Hogwood and the Zappa and
will you write the forward?
Oh, I would be so honored to. That would be wonderful. Yeah, the other thing before we wrap up, the other thing, you know, we mentioned favorite MAURY Baker moments. You know, Lully, the Nelson Mass, but of course. I would be remiss if I'd forgotten of course, the opening of the Christmas Oratorio a couple years ago.
God, yeah.
Yeah, man. You know, that's a piece that, you know, it took us. We got stuck on Messiah there for a few Decembers, and then we decided to put it away. And I was just so excited to start. Yeah. I mean, yeah. When you play, I mean, talk about George of the Jungle. When you play that thing, opening Christmas Oratorio, you know, a good party's about to go down. You know, the way it's just the perfect beginning to that.
Yeah,
so
it is. Yeah, I mean, and then it's rare that, you know, other than Haydn, maybe where you could do something like that. You know, and speaking of Haydn, you know what I'd like to do eventually, but we'll do it eventually, I guess.
Oh, tell me again. Tell me again. What Haydn?
The Creation.
Oh, of course. That's definitely a piece that's been on my checklist for a while. I have done it once before, and it was under. Let's just say it was under less than ideal circumstances, and I would love to take another whack at that one, because that would be fun to do.
Yeah,
definitely would love to do that. And the other piece that I would love to do is Israel and Egypt.
Oh yes,
I want to see. Yeah. I want to see you go nuts on "They Gave Them Hailstones for Rain."
Yeah.
I just want to see, like, just, your hair going crazy and mouth going,
What I love so much is after a concert, I go up to you, and then one of the things you always tell me, you said, I think you need to subdivide the beat just a little bit more on those penultimate measures, don't you think?
Oh, no, I tell you that?
Well, you said, one time you said, can you subdivide some more? And I said, sure.
Yeah, let him know it's the end. Let him know it's the end.
Oh, it's the end. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's that wonderful line in Amadeus when I think Salieri tells Mozart, it's like, the piece needs to end this way with a good bang to let them know it's the end. You know what I mean? Perhaps that was my way of saying that. Who knows? But anyway. Well, Maury, do you have any final comments? Any final things you want to?
I have to say, is that knowing you for this long, and knowing that the unbelievably gracious human being that you are, and the most brilliant conductor and musician in general, and knowledgeable, and there's nobody that I've ever worked with, and I seriously mean this, that I have experienced such exuberance and happiness, and I don't think I've ever seen you angry. I mean, if there were, if when you don't have the what's his name's eyes,
Harnoncourt's eyes, yeah, Harnoncourt's eyes.
You don't have that, and I
wish I did, but
yeah, another brilliant person was. But I mean, honestly, that's my takeaway from all of this, that I'm so grateful to be playing with you and grateful to be playing with such incredible musicians as I am. Every one of them, every single one of them. And the fact that when I show up there to do the gigs, I'm just, oh my God, I'm so excited. I don't want it to end. I wish we were doing 4 or 5 concerts. I don't care what the piece is, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Well, I really thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that. But I will dispel the myth. I mean, I have been angry, and music's hard. You know that music's hard, and especially when you have, in our case, oftentimes we're doing major works in a very short amount of time. I mean, we are having to put things together pretty quick. Right. But the beauty in this lies that we very, very carefully consider, the team that we put together, right, that not only brings like a ton of musical expertise and prowess, but also, wonderful collaborators and wonderful team members. That it's more than just making beautiful music, right? It's about being able to bring, 25, 30 people into one room and like get the work done and get it done efficiently, and we can all go have a drink afterwards and that sort of thing. So. Well, Maury, thank you so much for your time. I've been looking forward to this for some time now, and so once again, if folks want to find the Baker's Brew CD, they can go on to Facebook, your Facebook page, or look it up.
Yeah, or they can also go just look it up on they can Google it, Baker's Brew,
yeah,
and you'll have a few different hits there. So.
Okay, wonderful. So I know some folks are very likely are going to be looking into checking that out and that sort of thing. So I wish I could offer you a $50 gift certificate to Daniel's Jewelers today for your time. but I have nothing of that sort. So anyway, well, Maury, have a great rest of your day and stay safe and healthy until I see you again in real flesh and bones. Try to stay out of harm's way. Sound good?
And you too, and keep the family safe and give everybody a kiss. And I'm just thrilled to talk to you today.
All right. Take care, Maury. Bye.
Bye-bye.